Yeah, funny thing about our business, and maybe this comes up today, I don't know, like we're better known outside of Pittsburgh than we are here. It's like because none of our clients aren't here and we didn't raise money here. Because our clients aren't here, we don't do like PR here, we don't do earned media here. So it's funny like that it took me doing a podcast in Santa Barbara for it to make its way back here.
Because we are a little bit more Pittsburgh centric, there's some stuff about being in Pittsburgh that I'll ask.
Sure.
And I probably am going to wait to just get your quick response when I ask if that's cool.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
it's nothing like, so the other part of it is, I'm going to edit this in post. If there's brain farts or you say something like, we've had literally someone trash her former employer and then say like, can we cut that? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I've done enough of this that I'm not worried about that so much. I mean, although knock on wood, I guess. Yeah, Pittsburgh, I mean, like I said, I think I'll have a different perspective on Pittsburgh because I'm not doing business here very much, right? Like
right.
I have a point of view about the market that's probably different than, and I'm also, I mean, yeah, I love Pittsburgh and don't get me wrong, but I'm also not the like navel gazing.
Eyes wide shut.
Yeah, like we're all awesome all the time kind of thing either, so.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming on my podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here, Aaron. Thanks for inviting me.
We should start off by explaining what Civic Science is. That's a standard practice at the beginning of podcast interviews, but particularly for this kind of Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh-centric audience. Despite being a startup here in the city, it's not necessarily getting the same headlines locally, so it'd be helpful to explain what Civic Science is and what you're building.
Sure. Civic Science is a new breed of polling company. We've taken the idea of opinion research, understanding what people think, how they feel, what they do, and modernizing that. We provide services to mostly large corporations, large brands, media companies, hedge funds, other kinds of investment firms, and we help them sort of predict the future.
We previously interviewed Seth Stevens-Davidovitz of the book Everybody Lies, which in his book he took a bunch of anonymized data from Google and painted these pictures of, we have these maybe culturally assumed or agreed upon norms, and then this is what the actual data reveals as to our real behaviors. It seems like what your company does is also create this peephole into which we can start to really understand ourselves, as opposed to maybe just the agreed upon norms that everyone kind of talks about that obfuscates the truth to some degree.
We definitely position ourselves as purveyors of truth. If I ask 1,000 people a particular question, I don't put a lot of stock in the percentage breakdown of the answers I get sometimes because I know those people's answers are flawed. But it's studying those flaws that gets to be really interesting. So, for example, we have questions that we've tracked for 7-8 years in our database. Questions like, do you consider yourself to be overweight? Do you consider yourself to be addicted to your digital device? Do you consider yourself to be a healthy eater? Now, those are very subjective questions to an individual. I'm not asking you, are you overweight empirically, i.e. there's some chart, body mass index chart next to me and I see where I am on it. It's do I view myself to be overweight? And so imagine a line on a chart that sort of tracks the percentage of American people who consider themselves to be overweight or addicted to a device or what have you. We started to see about 1.5 years ago the percentage of Americans who considered themselves to be overweight decline dramatically. We started to see the percentage of Americans who said they're addicted to their digital device begin to decline dramatically. Now, is there any truth whatsoever to the fact that Americans are losing weight or becoming less addicted to their digital device? Absolutely not. What's interesting in that data and what we report out to our clients is that our perception of self has changed. And a lot of that's being driven by the culture of tribalism that's taking hold in America since 2016, that I isolate myself in a group of people and I judge myself against people that aren't in that group. And I think I'm better than people outside of my group. That's one of the sort of tenets of tribalism. And so I can sit there and say, well, yeah, maybe I don't love my weight, but I'm not as fat as that guy over there. Or, yeah, we're all sitting here looking at my phones, but I don't look at my phone as much as that person does over there. There's a change in the way consumers think about themselves, which is ultimately much more important than whether or not we are, well, maybe it's not more important than whether or not we're gaining or losing weight, because that's a public health crisis. But in the eyes of a marketer, who's thinking about a message I'm trying to portray to a potential buyer of my product, and I want to think about how much self-image is important today versus what it was 18 months ago. Those are the kinds of things we're educating our clients about.
You've gotten access to all of these consumer insights and these different trends as they're moving around. Has the access to that information and the look at it made you more, less cynical? How has your perception changed?
Wow, I've never been asked that question before. I've done a lot of this. That's
why we do it.
It's a great question. I don't think I'm more cynical. I think I'm more empathetic. As I understand a lot of people's perceptions, I certainly understand people's perceptions a lot better than I did before, and I'm very thoughtful about that. In fact, you asked me to come up with some way to challenge your listeners at the end of this, and it's going to be around this general topic, because we tend, as a society, to think in very obtuse ways. There's right, there's left, there's Steelers fans and Ravens fans, there's men, there's women, and everything is so much more nuanced than that. And when we study questions that are asked of people, sort of the whys and the hows of their beliefs, and we look at the intersection of what they believe with where they live and the jobs that they have and the media that they consume and the values that they cherish in their lives, I've learned to understand that it's just not as black and white as we think it is. It's easy for us to think in black and white, but the truth of this is it's so much more complicated than that. And I've learned to empathize, say, with people who have starkly different political attitudes than I do, because I can kind of understand a little bit better where they come from, because we were able, and maybe sometimes better than they even understand about themselves, which feels a little creepy sometimes. Like, they may not entirely understand how these different experiences in their lives formed them into the people that they are, but when you look at 1 billion plus poll responses and tens of millions of people, you start to figure that stuff out. So I would say I'm probably a lot more empathetic. Cynical about some things, for sure. Certainly, people think they're being objective when they're not, and you can see through that pretty fast. You can certainly tell, for example, like, people on social media don't realize how curated their persona is, right? Like, most people are some percentage of full of shit on social media, because I'm trying to portray myself as this funny, cool, like, adventurous, good eater. I only go to cool restaurants, I only check in at cool places, right? Like, it's nonsense. And so I definitely have my, like, antenna up for those kinds of things more than I did before. Like, we're all self-promoting, just whether if it's 90% or 10%.
We just went deep with John Dick. Hope everyone out there has a great day. Boom.
I think I even touched on this a bit. Like, the kinds of companies that buy from us, we're not cold calling our way into those people, man. Like,
right.
That day's over.
Yeah.
Like, the senior VP of marketing at Samsung is not taking an email from a stranger and turning that into a sales call, right? Like, or into a meeting. They're reading stuff that we put in front of them somehow because it was in the Wall Street Journal or a trade magazine that they read about, and then they reach out to us and say, help me bring this kind of thinking to my business. That's fun. I love talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
It was nice meeting you, Anna.
Nice meeting you
yeah,
too.
Sure.
I'll share this with you when it goes up next week.
Yeah, man.
And really appreciate you
Thanks
taking
for
the
having
time.
me.
Yeah, thanks
it was
so much.
quicker. How long was that?
It was like 45 minutes.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Holy cow, man, time flies. All right. Word. All right, be good.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Yep.
Quick callback to the episode where we did the location scouting for the Going Deep Summit, right? So I said something to the effect of, if you create a real cultural moment, does it even matter, like, how much money you make? And so that either makes sense or that's, like, weird. Like, what are you talking about? Of course you need to make money. You're running a business, Aaron. But here is how it all pieces together. So I have an email. I reached out to someone I did a podcast with like 2 years ago, who runs an agency, and I said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're producing podcasts and vlogs. That might be something that's helpful or valuable to one of your clients. He goes, oh, awesome. Let me loop in another person who works at my company. This other colleague replies, oh my gosh, you were the orchestrator of the Going Deep Summit. I'm friends with Ed Lattimore, and he had great things to say about the experience. And so we're already starting, not on first base, on second base, probably on third base in terms of reputation and just quality of work. And now we just have to find if there's alignment. All that initial obstacle has been overcome. It's actually kind of what John Dick was just talking about, where they're creating this content and people already have a perception of what they do and how well they do it. And then you're just talking about, well, how do we make this work? As opposed to pitching you on the very idea of it in the first place.
Right.